Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show, the Joe Palmetto Law Show. In 2017, there were 70,000 overdose deaths in the United States. 30,000 of those deaths were related to fentanyl. Now, just to give you a little perspective on that, in the entire Vietnam War, the United States suffered about 59,000 U.S. military casualties. So we're talking a decades long war that the United States fought in, saw 58,000 United States military fatalities. The opioid crisis in America is killing roughly 70,000 people per year. That's like one and a half Vietnam wars every single year. And the National Institute of Drug Abuse estimates that 30,000 of those are due to fentanyl. Today's episode, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about the flow of fentanyl, where it comes from, and what the country has been doing to stop it or slow it down. If you like this episode, do me a favor, subscribe, like, and share. Subscribe, like, and share. Also, leave a comment. It helps my metrics with YouTube, and every comment counts. So 70,000 overdose deaths per year, 30,000 per year due to fentanyl. Now, fentanyl is, I'll go into this more in a later episode, but fentanyl is essentially a synthetic substance that replicates the effect that an opioid has on your body. Natural opioids come from the poppy seed, opium. It would include drugs like opium, heroin, Oxycontin, Percocet, Vicodin, okay, morphine as we know it. They all act on your body and your brain in a similar way. Fentanyl was designed for medical usage. It's an extremely powerful painkiller, probably on a level more so than all of those other drugs. And it can be produced cheaply and synthetically. It is much cheaper to make than actual heroin. So what happens is drug dealers, users, abusers will sell the fentanyl either entirely in place of heroin, or they will mix it with heroin. So, like I said, 70,000 overdose deaths per year. That was in 2017, 30,000 of it due to fentanyl. So what I want to talk about today is, where does this fentanyl come from? Most experts, law enforcement officials, and I'm going to provide some links in the comments so that you can see where I'm getting this data, agree that the largest producer of fentanyl that ends up in the United States is China. The state of affairs in China prior to this year essentially was that fentanyl and its derivatives, which can also be used to create substances that have the same effect, fentanyl and its derivatives, were not declared a controlled substance in China. I don't know what is declared a controlled substance in China. I'm sure that the standard drugs like heroin, cocaine, probably marijuana, etc., are considered controlled substances in China, but fentanyl was not. Fentanyl is a synthetic drug, and perhaps in a later episode, I will get into more where it came from, how it turned into the street drug that it is now. Because frankly, I don't even know that whole story. I'd like to find out. So what was likely occurring in China, and how the scheme, the legislative scheme in the United States was that fentanyl wasn't regulated. It's a new drug, right? So it can take some time for the laws, the governments, the local governments to react to new substances, right? Things like methamphetamine, new drugs come on the scene all the time. MDMA, they may not be regulated at first until they hit the market and society begins to see the effects, and then boom, legislatures react, Congress reacts, the federal government reacts. Same deal in China, I would imagine, is that the traditional drugs, or the ones that have been around for a while, have been declared illegal, controlled substances. But fentanyl use picks up in the 2000s with the opioid crisis in the United States. And their government is perhaps slow to react, or maybe they just chose not to react. So the state of affairs was that fentanyl was not a controlled substance in China. Thus, the police, law enforcement were not regulating this drug. Okay, so of course it's profitable for producers of fentanyl to send this to the United States. The vast majority of it is mailed to the United States or mailed to Mexico, and then it's shipped up through the border. Okay. This state of affairs existed for the past several years. In 2017, President Trump did put some pressure on China to shut down the flow of fentanyl from their country. In the past several months, as trade negotiations heated up, President Xi Jinping in China agreed to make fentanyl a controlled substance. It's my understanding, and I will link to the articles, and maybe we'll run through them, that on May 1st of this year, and this month, May 1st, 2019, China declared fentanyl a controlled substance for the first time. So let's hope that can reduce some of the flow of fentanyl into Mexico and into the United States. The interesting thing, and I'm going to show you an article right now, okay, from the Washington Post, which talks about some of the reasons why China did not initially have fentanyl considered a controlled substance. You can see here, why is China refusing to stop the flow of fentanyl? March 4th article by John Pomfrey. And he lists some very interesting ideas down here as to why it's been legal in China for so long. One of the things that he talks about in this article is the Opium War. So we're talking about 200 years ago, when the British first opened up China to Western trade via force, okay, in order to sell opium to the Chinese people. It caused a lot of internal unrest in China. So this article cites that this is sort of a payback from the historical wrong that the United States committed upon China and other Asian countries. And what he cites is this state-run Global Times, this newspaper in China, that brings up that type of issue. There's also this weird claim in the Global Times, white Americans are more susceptible to fentanyl than other ethnic groups. And we can see where that's rooted. It's a claim that, the British and Westerners made about Chinese addiction to opium 150 years ago. Then they also cite some other issues that the United States and China have gone through. Back in 1990, there was a Chinese drug dealer in the United States that the United States refused to turn over to China because he feared execution. And there were other issues where the United States provided asylum to we're getting a little crazy here. Okay. Whoa. Okay. All right. We should be back to normal. Where the United States provided asylum to political dissidents in China. So, it's a little bit of maybe a bit of a historical payback that China felt they were giving to the United States from the Opium Wars. A little payback for the United States, providing a safe harbor to political dissidents in from China. And if you really look at the history of United States-China relations, this is an ongoing thing. It's a bit of a tit for tat for each country. But to me, I'm looking at this, I'm seeing this flow of fentanyl. I mean, we're not talking about one political dissident here and there, a bit of issues with intellectual property, which are very, very important. We're talking 30,000 deaths a year in the United States, not to mention the countless number of lives ruined by from people's addiction to the fentanyl. So, to me, this is a very, very important issue, and I think it's a significant, it's a very big deal that President Xi Jinping agreed to make this substance a controlled substance. There also may have been a little bit of China seeing the opiate crisis as a way to weaken the United States a little bit, create a little bit of instability, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to read into, well, let me stop that. I guess I am reading into China's motivations with this issue, but I can say that I don't know. This is purely speculation, and it's very encouraging that President Xi would agree to make this a controlled substance. One of the other issues, and I'll post this article though, is that whether China will actually be able to enforce this law when it goes into effect. China, number one, is a huge country. It does have a large state apparatus, but many of the officials in the Communist Party who would oversee this sort of enforcement just may not be that interested in carrying it out. So that's another issue that the experts think could stand in the way of China actually enforcing this new rule, declaring fentanyl a controlled substance and hopefully curbing its production and delivery to the United States. One additional issue is that this deal was more or less struck in December of 2018. It went into effect May 1st, but as you may know, trade tensions with the United States and China have heated up recently. There was a deal on the table. It fell apart at the last minute for various reasons. And now, President Trump is threatening additional tariffs. President Xi will likely retaliate with tariffs against the United States, and trade tensions will be heightened. I don't know if that's going to have an effect on the deal that was made regarding fentanyl. I hope that it would not, because to me, that's more important than the price of certain cheap products going up a couple of dollars here and there. I'd really like to see the flow of fentanyl into this country slowed down. Again, 70,000 overdose deaths per year, 30,000 per year. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I deal with this stuff every day. The state of Pennsylvania, in 2018 created stricter sentencing guidelines for fentanyl over heroin. Previously, it was essentially treated as heroin. Now it's treated as its own substance and in a much stricter way than heroin was. So the law is starting to change in a lot of ways, which I hope are helpful to slowing the rate of overdose deaths due to fentanyl in the United States. It's a very, very powerful and deadly drug. So thanks for joining me tonight. I just wanted to give you that quick synopsis of China and fentanyl and the Trump administration's recent deal regarding it. it comes in many different ways, but the main producer is China. If you check out the articles that I linked to, if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, like, and share. Subscribe to my show. Hit the like button. Share this on social media and leave me a comment. I try to respond to every single comment. So if you have something to share or say, I would be happy to hear it. Thank you very much.